Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today I'm looking at the 2025 governor elections that are up in the states of Virginia and New Jersey, and I'm assigning each state based on the latest poll conducted in each of these very close governor's races. So these two races that are up, first we'll start with the state of Virginia. In 2021, the Republican candidate Glenn Youngkin was able to defeat former Democrat Governor Terry McAuliffe in a very close competitive race. Now, a few things were happening here. In 2021, this was as President Biden, the Democratic president at the time, his approval ratings started to fall pretty mildly in the last few weeks leading into this election. So there was a lot of national anti-democratic sentiment happening in this race. There was also a lot of momentum that Glenn Youngkin was able to build in the state of Virginia, particularly on the issue of education. Now, this ended up resulting in a very, very close race where Youngkin was able to defeat McAuliffe by around 2 percentage points. Now, this is a lot different than what the race was back in 2017, where we actually saw a very different result from this, where the Democrat was able to win. Oh, that's New Jersey, excuse me, here's Virginia, where Democrat Ralph Northam was able to defeat the Republican Ed Gillespie by roughly 9 points. Now, in this one, this is as President Trump was in his first term, he was president, and his approval ratings at the time started to go down a lot in recent weeks, heading into the final few days of this election as well. So this is kind of the inverse of what 2021 ended up looking like. Now, the only thing is that Virginia is more of a I would say likely Democratic state at the presidential level. So when things break against the national Republican president in the state of Virginia, it hits a lot hard in the margin of results for the Republicans in Virginia than for the Democrats do. So just to give you an idea, again, just to show you the recent history of these elections in Virginia, it was about a 1.9% win for Youngkin, the Republican. 2017, Northam won by about 8.9% against the Republican Gillespie. And just to show you, back in 2013, this was a very interesting situation where Terry McAuliffe became the governor of Virginia, winning against the Republican Ken Cuccinelli by 2.5%. Though this election was very fascinating, as a third-party candidate took about 6.5% of the vote away. Now, the most recent poll out of the state of Virginia for 2025 is a poll from Roanoke College, was released about last week, and conducted last week, and it shows Abigail Spanberger at 46%, Winsome Sears at 39%, roughly a 7-point lead for Spanberger, the Democrat, over Sears, the Republican. And this is pretty much right in line with the current Real Clear Politics polling average of Spanberger plus 7.3, 14% still undecided in this poll. So based on that, Virginia would go into the likely Democratic category, which is in between 5 and 15% margin of victory. So that's where Virginia is right now. Now, this is going to be a very interesting race to watch for, especially in the Virginia suburbs, seeing how the map ends up looking like on Election Day compared to the 2021 map and compared to the presidential race in 2024, where we saw President Trump lose to Kamala Harris in the state of Virginia by about 6 points, 52 to 46, and you saw Harris put up pretty strong numbers in Loudoun County at 17 points, Fairfax 66 to 31, Prince William 58 to 40, and even in Virginia Beach, voting for Harris 51-48. But these numbers were also down from what Joe Biden got in 2020, where Biden won the state by about 10 points. That was a telling sign early on that this election was going to be a lot closer than 2020, and the Republicans were doing better when Harris was underperforming in Virginia compared to 2020, despite the fact that she was still winning the state. So Virginia has a lot to show in this governor's election and how things are going to end up potentially going there. Now, the state of New Jersey. New Jersey is also very interesting to watch for 2025, as back in 2021, the Democratic incumbent governor Phil Murphy, who was running for re-election at the time, faced off against Republican Jack Ciattarelli. And in that same election environment, that was anti-Democrat, anti-Joe Biden in New Jersey, which was a much more Democratic state at the time than Virginia was. Now things are kind of more equal in terms of how blue these states really are, based on how they voted in 2024. Phil Murphy was only able to defeat the Republican Jack Ciattarelli by 3.2%, Murphy getting 51.2%, Ciattarelli getting 48%. And this was very much of a surprise, as the polling heading into Election Day showed Murphy leading by a much larger margin than this when everything was said and done. So this was a very shocking result, and you saw some impressive wins in places like Morris County for Jack Ciattarelli, and improving on margins in Monmouth and Ocean, Hunterdon, and Warren and Sussex, as well as Ciattarelli's strong performance in Gloucester, Salem, Cumberland, and Atlantic counties as well. This is a very important race to watch for in New Jersey and how this all ends up going. Now, in 2017, however, we saw Phil Murphy win 55.7% to 42.2% against the Republican Kim Godano. Now, this was after 2 terms of Chris Christie being governor of the state of New Jersey, and his approval ratings were very poor, which could have led to a very massive win for Phil Murphy. I do believe Godano was the lieutenant governor of New Jersey under Chris Christie, so that likely hurt her even more. I don't think a 13-point victory is on the cards for the Democrats or the Republicans in 2025, but this was a very big Democratic win. Also, I did forget to show, here's the 2017 map of Northam versus Gillespie. This is what it ended up looking. Again, blue in the D.C. suburbs by pretty large margins, and blue in the Virginia Beach area as well. Just important areas to mark. Now, for the polling in the 2025 election, the most recent poll out of New Jersey came from Rutgers and Eagleton, showed a lot of undecided vote left out there, but the first part of the poll showed that Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat, is 44%, the Republican Jack Ciattarelli has 35%, 3% saying other, 17% still undecided at this time. So like with 2021, the polling in New Jersey is not really honing in on who the undecided voters are going to get at this current point in time. This race is still very wide open, but Mikey Sherrill in the most recent poll leads by about 9 points, which would put the state of New Jersey into the likely Democratic category as well as 5 to 15 points. So that's how the 2025 governor elections are supposed to go right now based on the most recent polls, with Virginia and New Jersey both being likely Democratic. And it's going to be very interesting to watch and maybe come back to after the election in November, where we obviously find out how this all goes. At this current point in time, these races are interesting because it certainly looks like the Democrats have the advantage in these races. The election history of off-year elections right after the presidential election suggests the party that did not win the presidential election usually is in for a good night. So this should be a very good night for the Democrats. But obviously this is a very important election to watch for and race to watch for as we get ready for the midterms. It's also worth noting New Jersey had a very interesting development where it only voted for Kamala Harris against Donald Trump by about 6 points. We saw Trump make a lot of improvements in places like Morris County and Passaic County. When back in 2020, we saw Joe Biden win the state of New Jersey by 16 points against President Trump in 2020. And that shifted all the way to only about a 6-point win in 2024. So New Jersey is very interesting to watch for a lot of reasons. One, it could potentially show, is New Jersey going to revert back to being more of a solid Democratic state, or is 2025 going to be proof that New Jersey is becoming much more of a competitive state, that even right now, even if it still leans for the Democrats, it may not be long for staying in that reliably Democratic category. So New Jersey is a very important state to watch. Virginia, which is already in this likely Democratic category, what does it do in 2025? This is going to be very interesting to watch as well. After the Republicans won almost shockingly in 2021, does it go more to the left in 2025? Maybe it's like a little bit of a Democratic resurgence in the state, even though they still have a pretty strong standing. What happens there? So that's the latest polls in Virginia and New Jersey, and they show the Democrats leading both by a likely Democratic margin. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Leave a comment below, tell me your thoughts, and hope to see you in a future video.